Let me see, I did 3 films for NBC to pay the rent, and 1 film for the public broadcasting, and I got frustrated with documentary, with the form, number 1, and number 2, I felt I was talking to the converted. Like I was doing very political issues, single mothers, and the one that was the most political was street gangs. So when I did that piece, it was both very exciting, but I felt, how can I say this? I just felt it wasn't reaching where I wanted to go. I felt it didn't, you could bring topics to people's attention, but you couldn't change their mind. And I know art doesn't, I said this already, but art doesn't change people's minds, but I think it prepares the ground for changing minds. So I wanted to do more formal invention. Basically it was the 70s, and I was seeing people like Richard Foreman and Bob Wilson. These are New York-based theater people that are very adventuresome. Very playful. They take apart the proscenium, they extend duration, they use noise instead of music. You know, they basically bring in all the avant practices of painting or theater into the theater space. And that was very, very exciting to me. And then I was introduced to people around Ken Jacobs, the filmmaker, and I was excited by the work I saw. I'm writing about Ken Jacobs right now, and one of the things I think is both Bruce and Ken are filled with content. They're not coming out of the Brakhage, Bruce Bailey, even Marie Menken diary film, nor are they coming out of the kind of neo-formalism or formalism structure of Paul Sharits or J.J. Murphy or even Michael Snow. They're operating in a public, critical space, which I think relates to my documentary and my idealism and my political sense of art. In fact, I think experimental film altogether should be a resistance. A resistance in form, a resistance in content. And I think ideally you want both of those things together. So I started to work with the footage because it did have a resonance for me, an emotional resonance. I could recognize it. Of course, it's so funny because I've been meeting people saying, oh, it's my childhood. Oh, I recognize it. Because I think home movies, whether it's from the 30s, you know, or 2050, it's recognizable because it's us. We're looking somehow, people look right at the camera, they present themselves. You don't really know what's going on. The parents might be divorcing, but everybody's smiling. So I'm interested in behind the camera. And then I was interested in kind of subverting it. I don't teach typical history. I teach production and something called critical screenings. I can teach history, but I'm less. So what I do is I find a theme, transgression, found footage, alternative spaces, films that are in installation format. So I find what I'm interested in, and then I collect the work. And the work might not always be experimental, it might be documentary. So I was saying for transgression, you know, I might do Nick Zed, but then I might do Wiseman's documentary Primate, which is about torturing monkeys for science. So I try to be more mentally conceptual about my idea rather than genre-oriented. And in fact, I love that because I love cinema. I love, a friend of mine, Nick Dorsky, he talks about the energy coming from the screen. And that's what I'm interested in. So it can be Ozu, or it can be Abigail, but it wants to be alive, it wants to talk to you. I don't have enough time to do my own work. I have so many projects that are just kind of waiting for the summer. And then you have to sleep a little, and then you have to work, and then you're back to school. And so it's very hard. Particularly, I think, in the US, there's very little support. Europe used to be much better. Maybe Europe is getting slower now, but for a long time, if you were in Europe, you wouldn't have to teach as hard or as much as you do in the US. We hate art in the US. The government is like, they wanted to cut art out of the budget, this new budget cut, but we fought to get art back in. I'm working now on an hour piece I shot in China, and there's one section of people shopping that I want to do, and it's like 1 million people shopping, right? It's like you're in a sea of shoppers, consumers, shoppers. It's kind of claustrophobic, but also interesting. Like you see every face. Sound builds until it becomes cacophonic, completely loud. So that would be the next one I'm going to do.